Hi, I'm Catherine, the author of TORIANA, and I'm going to be bringing you the next chapter. Chapter 20. It's called Crazy Cath. Everyone should be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. James 1 verse 19. It was such a quick decision, and I kept thinking to myself, Cath, are you crazy? Here I was in Kenya, packing my small bag to go home to South Africa to meet my lecturer. I had tried so hard not to hope, to not allow myself to fall in love, but his emails and all that we shared about each other's lives so far had been so encouraging. My bag packed, I knelt next to my bed, this time not weeping, but smiling and praising God. Thank you, Lord, for hearing my prayer. Please give me wisdom. When I arrived home, Dad picked me up from the airport. I tried not to show excitement, as I know my dad wanted me to exercise wisdom and to be careful. I could tell he was concerned. He was quiet, and I know he was just praying and trying not to comment. He just didn't want me to get hurt again, and he just watched me heal from Martin's death and had seen me fly out of the nest healed. Marie-Claire embraced me with such joy and excitement as I walked through the door. She had quickly managed to get my room ready and needed my help to get Robert's room prepared. I then unpacked a few things I had, and Marie-Claire decided we needed to go shopping. I felt like I was having a makeover. I had been living simply on the mission field, and now was stepping into a world of fashion and dress-up. It was such fun trying on different things, and Marie-Claire giving guidance on what looked good and what colours best suited me. The winter and summer colours like dark purple, reds and navy blue. Actually, it's this outfit that we bought together is what I wore. I felt more confident to meet Robert in a few hours' time. I wanted to quickly check my email, so I sat down with a nice cup of steaming hot tea, and sure enough there was an email from Robert. The subject line read, "Something you need to know about me before we meet." As I opened the mail and started reading, I did not expect to read what I read, but I understood why he sent me the email. Robert explained that he had a stutter which impaired his speech at times. I had once known a little boy who stuttered when I was small at the end of our street where I grew up. I had thought the best way to help him was to be his friend, but not force him to talk in any way. A good family friend, Lynn, was visiting my dad and Marie-Claire. And Marie-Claire was telling her all my new developments in my life and why I had suddenly popped home from the mission field. I went through to the living room, but my mind was whizzing with thoughts of what I had just read in the email from Robert. Lynn sat with me, and I shared that he had just emailed me to say he was a stutterer. She then sat and explained to me one of the best things one can do to help a stutterer. One must not feel awkward or nervous or embarrassed for the person stuttering. Don't look away, but look straight into their eyes. And even when they stutter, don't try to complete their sentences. This is not helpful and is more stressful for them. Rather, wait patiently and allow them to try again and complete their own sentences. You see, from our perspective, we think if we help them to finish their sentence, then we're helping them so that they don't have to speak so much. But what it does is it puts pressure on them to complete their sentences well. It is all to do with their speaking muscles. If these tense up, then the stuttering is worse. If relaxed, then speech flows more fluently. So the best is to listen and not to speak, and not to show frustration, but complete love and acceptance. This is some of the best advice I have been given, and I made a decision in my heart and mind that whatever happened between Robert and I, in this time, that he would know the love of Christ through me just listening and being his friend. I then quickly rushed back to my computer to reassure Robert I would be waiting for him at the airport, and that his stutter would not bother me in the slightest. I decided to add some crazy humor, and I said I had not told him, but I would have a board with his name, and I would be the crazy young lady with pink hair. I did not have pink hair, but I felt it would be fun to add some humor. Robert told me later. He then thought, oh dear, what have I got myself into? I was all ready to go, my sign with Robert's name, and as I was stepping into the living room, my dad was chatting to Lynn and Brian, and they felt it would be less stressful for Robert if Lynn and Brian brought me to the airport instead of my dad. They felt it would be better for us to spend time alone before meeting my dad. This was also good advice. As I waited, the whiteboard sign with Robert's name, I felt tingling butterflies in my heart, and I couldn't wait to meet him. I recognized him straight away, but could tell he was still searching the crowd of people in front of him. As I stepped in front of him, we embraced, and he said, oh, I am relieved. I'm relieved that you have brown hair. I think as we climbed into the car, he was also relieved that it was just some family friends and not my dad. At first, Robert stuttered with me, but he saw I did not finish his sentences or feel nervous about his stutter. And he then completely relaxed and didn't stutter at all. Lynn and Peter dropped us both at home, and I showed Robert to his room. No one was home. This, I realized, might also have been planned. So we made some tea and sat in the garden drinking tea and chatting. When my dad arrived home, he greeted Robert, and as Robert shook his hand, I could see it was a bit nerve-wracking for him, and then he stuttered. Dad had to rush and attend to some work issues. We then returned to the garden to continue chatting. Marie-Claire then came home and was hugely welcoming and radiant, showering Robert with much love and acceptance. I then decided it would perhaps be best if we went out for coffee and explored various places in Sandton. Robert was an architect, so it was fascinating to see his insights of various buildings we drove past. We decided to go to Sandton Square. We had so much to talk about and share in person. We sat side by side on the steps in Sandton Square, discovering more about each other's lives, our families and childhood memories. I could listen to Robert for hours. It became a bit chilly, so we found a warm, cozy coffee shop, a fire and soft glowing lights. I then shared with Robert that if we wanted to take our friendship further, I had made an agreement with my dad long ago. This agreement was that any man that intended to go out with me needed to ask my dad to court me with the purpose of marriage and not just a dating relationship. Robert also felt that we both needed to share with SAT's leadership what was happening between us. Robert booked a time with his supervisor and the leaders of SATs. It felt like we were stepping into our school principal's office with a confession. I suddenly started to feel a bit nervous. However, as we both shared openly and honestly with SAT's leadership, they embraced us and gave us their blessing on our relationship. I cannot explain the depth of love I felt for the SAT's leadership and staff. They were our spiritual family, and we valued their guidance and leadership. As we left the SAT's head offices, our faces were lit with smiles, laughter, and much joy. My dad was not so easy. However, I was amazed at Robert's boldness and creativity. As we arrived home for afternoon tea, my dad was reading a newspaper on our family couch. Robert greeted him and then asked him if he could cook Dad and Marie-Claire a meal. My dad was presently surprised and said yes. Then off we went, and Robert had a plan. He knew exactly what he was going to cook and buy. I assisted him, but he mostly did everything, and he took over Marie-Claire and Dad's kitchen. I then laid the table, and everything was all ready. I can remember sitting in our family dining room, thinking this was the most incredible man I'd ever met. He cooked the most delicious meal of ostrich steak, large mushrooms, and a sauce. Later we had pudding. He then asked to speak to my dad alone. After they chatted, neither of them shared with me the decision that was discussed, and I went to bed not knowing what to think. The next morning, Robert said we needed to fly to Port Elizabeth to meet his family. So we both went to the airport, and I had no idea what to think. What I did know was that I was falling madly in love with Rob, and I was really struggling to keep my heart from not falling in love with him. As the plane was about to take off, I was nervous, and I grabbed his hand. Oh, it felt heavenly to have my hand in his. As the plane glided into the clouds and was steady, we let go of each other's hands, but my heart just knew this was the man for me. I found him very attractive and felt feelings I had never felt before. I looked out of the small aeroplane window and thought to myself, in the past, with Martin, I had thought a marriage was about being with your best friend and serving Jesus on the mission field together. But now I realized chemistry and being attracted to each other are also beautiful godly experiences that are part of His will. After the plane landed, we met Robert's mum at the airport and went to a lovely little coffee shop. She was warm and welcoming, and I really felt loved and accepted. Rob took me for a drive around Port Elizabeth in his little red car, exploring all the architectural buildings he had designed and been a part of overseeing at the building sites until completion. Every place we went to, he treated me like a lady. He opened the car door, and every door I came to. I felt so loved and cherished. Then we arrived at his home, and he gave me a beautiful bunch of flowers. We had a lovely supper at his home, and I stayed with his parents. They all had such a great sense of humor, and we laughed a lot. The next night, Robert said he was taking me on a date. He booked us at a table at a special Austrian restaurant with live music that was being played on a grand piano. It was here that Robert asked me if I would court him and go out with him. He said my dad had given his blessing when he had asked him. I held his hand and with a glowing face said yes. Oh, I felt so much joy and happiness. I felt so in love with Robert, and now we could express our love to each other. I didn't have to hold back loving him any more. That weekend we met the rest of the family, and Robert took me for a drive to Cape St. Francis. The sea was rough, and we sat in the car watching the waves. Then Robert handed me a long black box. As I opened it, there was a beautiful bracelet, and he put it on my wrist. It was really beautiful, and is really beautiful. Then we embraced and kissed, and then I just rested in his arms.